Welcome into the Saints Insider Podcast. Today is Friday, October the 4th. And, boy, I don't know. I think Kirk Cousins just threw for another 30-yard touchdown pass. A wild, wild Thursday night football game last night that the Atlanta Falcons won. And all of a sudden, guys, this is a Saints-Chiefs preview podcast, but let's put it in context. The Falcons are the favorites again in the NFC South after 5 days of, I don't want to call it all luck, but some big breaks in a couple of division games.
That's what you need, man. That always ends up being the difference. How often do you see a team win a division because they're just blowing everybody out? You need to have the good stuff happen to you in critical moments. That's why we're talking about the Saints as a 2-2 team right now, because they've had all the bad stuff happen to them, and they've obviously contributed to that.
Sometimes the breaks go your way, and sometimes they hit a 3-run go-ahead homer in the ninth.
Come on, man.
Oh, man.
Come on, man.
Ow. Damn,
He had that one teed up.
We're done recording today.
Luke's walking off. He does
don't
that.
Don't tee him up again. God, jeez.
Man, he's just lying.
I didn't even know that was coming.
Silent assassin.
Hey, Saints Insider is sponsored by Bank Plus. Their banking decisions are actually made here in New Orleans by local bankers who know the community and take the time to know you. From small business to big business, home loans to bank anywhere technology, Bank Plus is here for New Orleans. Member FDIC, equal housing lender. Learn more at bankplus.net. I don't even know how to follow that.
Yeah, no, I'm steamed up. I'm going to come after all of Matt's takes today.
I don't even know how to follow
Should we
that.
explain
Be like a spider monkey.
that Luke is a big Brewers
Luke's a
fan?
Brewers fan.
So
he wasn't even
I
watching
didn't
that
know
crazy football game because he was watching
I wasn't.
the Brewers.
He was a Brewers fan.
To be honest, I had to follow up and see what happened in the Bucks Falcons games. I was so mad last night after the Brewers blew a 2-run lead in the 9th inning that I went to bed.
I'll tell you
read
what,
a book.
I know football can be miserable when you lose a close game, but there's nothing like a baseball game where you think you've got it in hand. You got your
2
closer
outs
on the
away,
mound. And all of a sudden in one swing. So maybe we'll just take a break and let Luke cool off. How about that? Let's take a break. We'll be back after this.
Ooh, I see at least 3 of them in there.
3 what?
Possums, big rats, I don't know.
Clarify big.
You're gonna have to gut it.
How much is that gonna cost? Maybe I should just move.
Maybe.
Is that your van?
Hi, strawberry mango. Mm-hmm. Here you go. Thank you. I'll take another one.
All right. So that went off the rails before the first break. Let's focus in on Saints versus Chiefs here on the Saints Insider. Obviously, a big game for New Orleans. If they win the game, they're tied for first place with both Atlanta and Tampa. We talked about on Wednesday's podcast, Matt, probably was better for them that Atlanta won that game because all of a sudden Tampa wins and you lose to Kansas City. You're 2 games behind, and next week becomes pretty close to a must-win if you're going to win the division.
Yeah, no, they're right there. If they can somehow beat the Chiefs, they'd all be tied for first. It's the Falcons winning is what you would want if you were the Saints, but next week is going to be really important too, just so they don't fall even further behind if they lose to Kansas City.
This is a tough spot because it is between 2 division games. You just came off of a tough loss. You have this Tampa Bay game that's so important next week. And by the way, you're playing the 2-time reigning champions at Arrowhead Stadium on Monday Night Football.
Yes. Yeah, this is look, we were all looking at this before the season even started, this individual game without the context that you just laid out as probably the toughest challenge on their schedule. Maybe the one exception being going to Green Bay in late December. It's always a tough environment to play in there. Even though the Chiefs have looked really vulnerable through 4 games, they're still 4-0. And, as we were just talking about, the Saints have missed their opportunities to close games and to come up with close wins. And the Chiefs have nailed all theirs. They're 4-0. I think all 4 of their games are decided by 1 score or less. Well, 1 score. So, tough team. Vulnerable, but tough. And I think it's going to be a really difficult matchup, especially because of some of the guys that we're probably not anticipating playing in this game.
And that's kind of the context of all of this, Jeff. Luke's writing a big story about how the Saints have done going back a couple years now in close games. Spoiler alert, it's not good. Luke's got a lot more information than that. And obviously the Chiefs have become the preeminent team at, kind of pulling one out of nowhere. getting outplayed for 3 quarters and then finding a way to win because they have the defense to keep other teams close, and then they have a quarterback who just seems to find a way.
Yeah, I think a lot of it is Mahomes' magic. This is just a rare guy. I mean, he's obviously the best quarterback in the game right now, one of the greatest ever. And in this day and age where everything's suited toward the quarterback, I mean, they've won a lot of games with Mahomes on pass interference calls on the other team. Some things late where he's able to just make something happen. That's rare.
That should ring a bell for Saints fans.
Right. It's the opposite, right?
That's not what you want to hear.
But look, I think sometimes these things, the law of averages, things start to even out. I think, living dangerously the way the Chiefs are, it's going to come back and bite them soon. It will. And I think the same thing for the Falcons. I don't think you can keep winning games where your probability to win is below 15% in the last few minutes. That's just not going to keep happening. So I think on the other side for the Saints, they just need to stay the course. I mean, their metrics around the league, all the key indicators, third down, red zone, all the things you want to be good at, they're at the very top of the league. So if they can maintain that, then I think the wins will come eventually.
The only counter I have to that is they had a lot of that stuff going for them last year, minus the offensive red zone early in the season. It was a really, really poor performance. They lost a couple games because of it. But, I mean, how many teams do you see that finished top 10 in the NFL in scoring, top 10 in scoring defense, up near the top of the NFL in turnover margin, and finished 9-8 and missed the playoffs?
Yeah.
They've found ways to lose games. Like it is absolutely something that you have to consider with this team. Even though a lot of the underlying numbers look really good, they've managed to just mess it up late in games. It's a big problem for them. They got to figure out how to get over that, because if they don't, like we have seen and we've heard guys say, that's the difference between winning teams and losing teams.
Right, and the first 2 weeks were so dominant that that's propping up the numbers too a little bit.
Yeah.
It's interesting, and we can talk about the betting line as part of this conversation too. The Chiefs are favored by 5.5 points. I have the over-under here is 43.5. I noticed right before the show it had actually moved down to 42.5. I don't think they get to 42, barring some defensive scores or something. I think this is a very low-scoring game. We'll give our predictions at the end. But I find that number to be high, and the reason I say that is because if you're a fan who follows analytics, like you said, Jeff, the Saints analytically look like a good team, maybe even better than the Chiefs. And so 5.5 points, even in Kansas City, seems like a lot. On the flip side, like you're saying, Luke, if you're just Joe football fan or Jane football fan, how do you see the Chiefs losing this game to a team that just can't find a way to win close games?
I don't know. That's why
that's
they play the game,
yeah.
And I mean, look, I think the Saints can win this game, and I wouldn't be shocked at all. But like their recent history in the last couple of years, the Chiefs' recent history, that stuff matters. As hard as it is to put a finger on it, and as difficult or impossible as it is to quantify it analytically, that stuff really does matter. Does matter. Good teams find a way to come through in those moments, and bad teams don't. That's why the Saints have been in the position they've been in the last couple of years.
Yeah, it's kind of. I mean, if it's tied, if it's 13-13 with 5 minutes left, who are you picking? I mean, come on.
I mean, the Chiefs. I actually worry about the fact that the Chiefs' offense hasn't really clicked yet. That I wouldn't consider the Saints a get-right team for a situation like that, but New Orleans does have a tendency to give up big plays. They struggle to cover tight ends. Like, there's a scenario here where I think the Chiefs' offense could get into a groove, fix some of the things that haven't worked for them the first few weeks, and start to get into a rhythm offensively. And once that happens, they're super hard to stop.
Especially if Mahomes starts extending plays like he does. Against a man coverage heavy team like the Saints. Maybe not playing as much man as they have in the past, but still, I mean, it's like their bread and butter defensively. So,
it's a good way to get into our next point, which is the injury report. And the reason I say that is because the Chiefs are absent some playmakers. Their top 2 receivers, Hollywood Brown and Rashee Rice, are both out. Their top running back, Isaiah Pacheco, is out. Of course, on the other side, the Saints have 15 guys listed on their injury report.
Yeah, and like some of this is like new reporting procedures for the NFL. If a guy's dealing with like literally anything, you have to list him on the injury report. But I mean, let's just be clear about this. Like the Saints are really a banged up team right now, and a lot of really important players are banged up for him. Taysom Hill, Matt, you wrote about Taysom this week, how important he is to this offense. Eric McCoy, obviously we've talked about that ad nauseum. I think Cesar Ruiz is a really important player, especially for what they want to do with the zone running game. He's a really athletic guard who can get out there and move. I thought he's had some really nice games early in the season. So, like, these are not guys that you just pop somebody in there and don't worry about it. Especially with Taysom, he's so unique. It allows you to do so many things. It's not just the volume. It's like the key guys who you're talking about potentially missing this game.
And it sounds like both defenses are going to be fairly healthy, whereas the injuries mainly are on both offensive sides. So it lends itself to being a defensive-dominated game because both defenses are obviously very good too.
Yeah. It looks like the Saints are going to get Demario Davis back. That's positive for them, but they're going to be without Willie Gay. I thought he played well before he got hurt last week. He's another guy that maybe could have gone and helped contain Mahomes a little bit. But, yeah, the defense is mostly healthy.
Yeah, and that's another reason why I think it feels like a low-scoring game, and we'll begin our breakdown in a minute. I do want to bring up one playmaker for the Saints who they may get back, and that's going to be our transactions segment, which is proudly sponsored by Associated Grocers. Join our team and help support the success of local independent retail grocers. Apply today for available positions at Associated Grocers. And that's Kendry Miller. Do we think he did get in a limited practice? We're talking Friday morning, and because it's a Monday game, we've only seen one day of open practice. Kendry Miller did practice yesterday. Do we think the Saints get him back? And if they do, how much are they going to use him, Luke?
That's like the $1 million question. It seems like an obvious thing where you get an explosive running back in there, somebody who can help take some of the load off of Alvin Kamara, because I think we all probably agree that Alvin's usage is unsustainable. We've seen in the past where he's had these really heavy usage numbers, and he hasn't been the same player toward the end of the season. They want to avoid that. If they truly believe they're a playoff caliber football team, they want to have Alvin there for the stretch run. Like, they need somebody there who can help take some of the load off of him. Kendry Miller seems like an ideal candidate for that. I think we haven't seen it, obviously. Yesterday was the first time he's practiced since the first day of training camp. But it makes sense for him to be an effective runner in this scheme, somebody who's a really explosive player with the football in his hands. But we just don't know, and that's like what we keep hearing with Dennis Allen. I think, Matt, you asked him about Kendry Miller yesterday, and Dennis is like, I have no idea what we have in him. We haven't seen him practice. So, I think they should get him involved. They should try to get him involved. But we really don't know what it's going to look like with him because we haven't seen him.
And can he even play, this quickly? I'd be surprised if he's out there Monday night.
I mean, if you've only logged 3 practices literally since the beginning of training camp.
There's a thing of football shape is
a
whole different world than just getting out there to practice. I'll be surprised. And even DA sounded a little like, let's see him over the next few weeks of this ramp-up period. He didn't sound, maybe he's being cagey. I don't know if DA's can be cagey.
It's not like they have a lot of film to go back on with Kendry Miller.
It's also, you pulled a hamstring, even if you pulled it bad on July 27th. By October 4th, you ought to be ready to go. I mean, football shape's a different story, but
legs should be fresh.
Yeah, in theory, but the Saints technically have 21 days to, they've opened his window to designate him to return from injured reserve. If they don't do that in that time frame, then he's done for the season. But Allen said on Monday that the 21 days would be important for him. So read between the lines, and maybe he doesn't play. But it also, I could see a scenario where Taysom Hill doesn't play. They're looking around and said, oh, shoot, we need, another playmaker. And they try and get him out there. But
they just can't. They can't keep doing what they're doing with Alvin Kamara.
No.
I mean, especially when they go out there last week, or Alvin goes out there last week and says he's getting 24 carries with broken ribs. I mean, it's just, he's a really, really good football player, and they're going to limit how good he can be if they keep just running him into the grinder 25 times a game.
And by the way, bigger picture, They play Tampa Bay on a short week, then they play Denver on an even shorter week right after this. So getting guys A, healthy, but B, keeping them healthy is going to be super important.
I don't understand why they don't throw Jordan Mims out there. I mean, he's on the roster for a reason. We saw him in preseason. He has a little juice, and I think he's got more juice than Jamal Williams at this point. Maybe they don't trust him in pass protection and some of the other things, but Luke's right. I mean, they've got to find somebody else that can carry the ball. Alvin's taking some big hits, man. And we know he's banged up, but he's taking hits on top of that.
Yeah.
He's just not going to hold up.
Yeah. Saints fans, Associated Grocers is hiring. If you're looking to join a team dedicated to supporting independent grocers, apply today. Your future starts here. Okay, that's kind of a start to our game breakdown, but let's get into it after a break, and then we'll end with our predictions. So we'll be back on the Saints Insider right after this. All right, let's begin our game breakdown. Saints versus Chiefs. It's Monday Night Football. It's on ESPN, 7:15, Monday night from Arrowhead Stadium. We'll start, as we always do, when the Saints have the ball. And to me, guys, this discussion really starts with that interior offensive line. We know Eric McCoy is still going to be out. We think Cesar Ruiz probably trending toward out. He didn't practice Thursday.
Yeah, we won't know again for these till Sunday. We won't know the.
Yeah, Shane Lemieux also popped up on the injury report after playing center last week. He left the very last drive of Sunday's game in Atlanta. So no matter how they mix and match things, you've got an inexperienced / reserve interior offensive line against Chris Jones and that Kansas City defensive line. And they got to find a way to figure that out.
Yeah, and it's not only that. It's I think Steve Spagnuolo is a very, very good defensive coordinator when it comes to dialing up pressure plans on opposing quarterbacks. And obviously they're very familiar, going back to Derek Carr's Raiders days, with what pressure can do to Derek Carr. So that, to me, I mean, that's the whole key to this game offensively for the Saints is how do they mitigate the impact of that interior rush and their interior defenders kind of writ large. We've seen what a premier NFL defensive interior player can do to this Saints offense, right? With Jalen Carter and the Philadelphia Eagles just completely wrecked that game. They can't allow that to happen again, or they can't allow it to happen in that way. They've got to get a little bit creative with how to minimize that impact. And I thought last week they had a pretty good plan, right? Knowing that they were without two of their better interior players, knowing that pressure was going to be important. They dialed up a lot of quick passes, a lot of rhythm passes. Derek Carr looked very comfortable in it, even though they weren't hitting the over-the-top stuff. I think Olave and Shaheed were both getting open. You kind of see a similar path to this week's game. Although I will say that I think the Falcons' safeties probably had something to do with that as well. Kind of keeping the top on the Saints offense. I don't think the Chiefs have the same quality of players. Justin Reed's a really nice player. But they're not Jesse Bates and Justin Simmons back there. I think there's going to be a chance if they can get the run game going, get the play action game going, get that kind of quick rhythm passing game going to have a shot or two downfield.
I do think that the Chiefs are probably a better linebacking team than the Falcons too. Dennis Allen really spoke glowingly about Nick Bolton.
Where did he go to school?
Mizzou, I'm guessing, based on
University of Missouri. Thank you.
Yes. And so he's had a really impressive start to his career. They have solid corners even after losing Snead to the Titans. It's a really solid unit, and schematically what they're able to do and what they're able to disguise with, I think, goes a long way in that as well. This defense is carrying the Chiefs right now. It's not so much the offense.
I mean, that's actually was my next point. It's pretty amazing to see the evolution of this Chiefs dynasty, where they go from the last time the Saints played them was in 2020 at the Dome. And Mahomes throws for 347 yards, and Drew Brees threw for 342 yards or something, and it was 32-29. And it's just this shootout and now they're winning these games 20-13 and stuff. Jeff, like this is, I mean, the evolution's been amazing.
It kind of reminds me of the evolution we saw in New England, right, with the Patriots, where they early on in the Belichick era they won with defense, and then they became this offensive juggernaut with Brady, and they just kind of morphed into whatever they had personnel-wise. That's what Andy Reid's doing here. And I agree with Luke, man. I mean, to me, this is like a Clint Kubiak game. Like, this is where he's going to earn his money this game. He's got to scheme it up and mask the weaknesses and try to play to the strengths they have. But I do think it's going to be much harder this week than it was last week. I mean, Atlanta's defense, I think, is very average. We saw this Thursday night they were getting strafed. They don't have the corner play. I think the Saints attack their corners. That's not going to be the case this week. I think it's going to be a lot harder to move the ball against Kansas City. But whatever they do, they've just got to keep out of 3rd and long. They can't get Carr in facing those exotic blitz pressure packages. That gives the Saints a lot of problems. And that's when bad things start to happen. When we saw it happen in Atlanta, when things get chaotic, it's just a disaster often. And I think the key to this game is going to be avoiding mistakes and, like Luke said, somehow running the ball in this defense.
Derek Carr's 3-14 all time against the Chiefs. I did not look to see how many of those Spagnuolo was the defensive coordinator for, but he obviously does know what bothers Derek, and we're going to see, what Carr can do under pressure, because he's going to have to make. They don't have to score 30 or anything, but he's going to have to make some plays.
I mean, a punt is not going to be bad Monday night. Like, live with punts. I think it's going to be low scoring, like you said. I think the Saints, when we get to that point, I think the Saints defense will be able to control KC, keep this game low scoring, and if you're in the fourth quarter, maybe you lose it again.
you have a chance to lose another close game. No, just kidding. Okay, next up, when the Chiefs have the ball, and obviously you're facing Patrick Mahomes, it's kind of crazy. As much as Mahomes has become the face of the NFL, and he's won 3 Super Bowls, and he's him and Travis Kelce are in every other commercial between games, and he's only played the Saints one time, and it was that game I was talking about in the Dome in front of 3,000 fans during the COVID year. So Dennis Allen talked yesterday, Matt, about how difficult it was to defend him in that game, and I actually went back and looked at the AP story from that game, and the lead of the story is Patrick Mahomes making off-balance, off-platform throws, and how much that was able to disrupt the Saints. And so that's what they have to combat here.
Reading the AP story and not ours? What
I
are you
was
doing?
I was going to make that point too.
Wow.
I think this is bogus.
When you look up the box score and that's
yeah,
what's there.
All you have to do is go in the Google search bar, cite NOLA.com. Saints.
Yep.
Luke Johnson.
I'm going to go do that after
Luke
the show
Johnson.
as well as you all should.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I bet my story was awesome.
Subscribe to the channel too, by the way.
Can we get Rod
Who
in
wants
here
to read
be the new
Brett?
host?
That's
The point is, when you
Brett.
search the box score, the AP story's right there. And so I didn't even click on it. I just saw it.
Yeah. That's excuses. Buddy.
Anyway, Pat Mahomes.
yeah, good player. Turns out.
The end. Call it a podcast.
Not speaking for any selfish fantasy purposes, but I think this is the game that Travis Kelce gets going, or would like to. Like, I just don't believe he's washed. I know that he's had a very slow start to the season, but his advanced metrics, he's still getting open at a pretty good rate. The Saints' pass defense is really solid. Jeff, you had that stat in your story today that I'm sure you'll say in a minute, but just what tight ends have been able to do to this team is just, I know they shut out Kyle Pitts last week, but
That's
Kelsey's
Kyle Pitts.
Kelsey's actually Kyle Pitts with a track record.
Well, the other thing is here, he's the only starting caliber weapon that the Chiefs have left. I guess Xavier Worthy, the rookie.
Juju Smith-Schuster.
Yeah, Juju Smith-Schuster's going to play a big
Hunt.
role. They're short on weapons.
Discounting Kareem Hunt.
They're short on weapons. I think their offensive line is
Ryan.
just okay. They've got good interior players in their offensive line. Creed Humphrey's one of the best centers in the NFL, but at tackle, Jawan Taylor, see their left tackle? He ended up taking the rookie's place, Suamatea.
Yeah, they had to sub him out because he was playing so poor.
Yeah, I mean, I just think that this offense is short on a lot of stuff. I mean, it has Pat Mahomes elevating everything, even if he hasn't been the version of Pat Mahomes that we've all seen for the first 7 years of his career. But kind of across the board, I mean, their running backs hurt, their top receivers hurt. You know, Kelce's been kind of up and down this year. This is a vulnerable offense right now. And I'm sure I'm going to look like an idiot after Mahomes lights them up for 400 yards and 4 touchdowns on Monday night. But it's just, you know, they're able to be got.
Well, one thing the Chiefs haven't done, Duncan, that's why they've won these close games, is Mahomes is so good at taking what you give him, and then he doesn't make these crucial game-changing mistakes either.
Well, he's been throwing picks, just not late.
I think it's 9 straight games he has a turnover, actually.
But not late. You're
but
right.
it's when the game's on the line, you don't see that.
No, you're right. But I mean, like Luke's got a great point. I mean, their offensive line was supposed to be a major strength coming into this season, and they're having all kinds of problems. Even some of the players that they've been counting on have not played very well. I think Tooney's not played well. So they're, I think, very vulnerable up front. At some point, Mahomes can't just keep pulling these rabbits out of the hat. I don't believe that. And the Saints' defense, and I pointed it out in my column, they have the best pass defense in the league. They've given up 1 touchdown pass all year, and that was that fluky one where Tyron and whoever it was ran.
Adebo on CeeDee Lamb.
CeeDee Lamb, that's it. I mean, the opposing quarterback rating 68 right now, best in the league.
I think they led the league in opposing pass rating last year,
I think so, too, yeah. I mean, what we're seeing is like very high-level stuff on the back end without a great pass rush. I mean, it's been okay. It hasn't been terrible, but it's not like elite.
Yeah.
And they're just covering so well.
And again, it's against a team that is short on weapons. And it reminds me a little bit, it's funny to say this, but it reminds me a little bit of the Carolina situation. They have no weapons. They're a terrible matchup for the Saints, so you have nowhere to go with the ball. Now, that was Bryce Young. This is Patrick Mahomes. It's 2 extremes, so can Mahomes find out a way? But against this defense...
I don't know. You did pick the Panthers to be a playoff team.
I did not pick them to be a playoff team.
We have that
Maybe
on
it's
video?
not 2 extremes.
I picked them to be in the conversation in December, which could still happen. Thank you, Andy Dalton.
Conversation for the number 1 pick.
All right. Special teams. I did want to throw this out there. I'm going to mispronounce his name. Matt Arriaza. Is that right? The Chiefs punter?
I think it might be Areza.
Areza? Okay.
Amazing.
5th in the league in net punting. Matthew Hayball's 5th from the bottom of the league in net punting. Areza had that. There was like a punt against the Chargers last week where it was going to go over his head, and he made a miraculous one-handed catch and got it away. So in a game that feels like it could be tight, low-scoring, the punters are going to matter too.
Punter and kickers. I mean,
Blake Groupie, TNP Wednesday or Thursday with a right hip injury.
you saying we're going to see Charlie Smith kick a 65-yarder?
Monday Night Football at Arrowhead, his first ever
that was one of
NFL
my
kick.
bold preseason predictions. So let's
Forgot about that.
Wow. Again, it's Friday morning, so we only have 1 injury report to work off of. Blake Groupie might be fine, but
yeah.
Well, I think it feels safe. Not giving the kiss of death here. I think it feels safe that Rashid Shaheed will not make another boneheaded error. That was so rare of him to do.
Totally out of character.
Completely out of character. And I think that play probably shocked him back into I need to focus on this stuff. And we saw him deliver at the end of that Falcons game last year, a big punt return to set up a short field that set up the go-ahead touchdown. So I still feel really good about the Saints' return game, but the other specialists have been kind of hit or miss so far.
And I think Pro Football Focus overall, the Saints special teams are best in the league through the first 4 games.
Well, the Saints have been the Chiefs. The Chiefs have been the team that is just like, screw it, we're just going to kick it out of the back of the end zone every time in these new kickoffs. The Saints have forced teams to return.
Yeah,
I got to clarify this. You're saying there have been number 1 PFF special teams, including Rashid Shaheed?
Yeah, overall.
Guiding a ball into the end zone for a free touchdown?
Before last game, they were number 1. Maybe that did.
I was going to say, that has to have something.
Maybe that eliminated it. Yeah, because that was. But Luke's right. I think it was the first time he muffed a punt, right?
Punt, yes. Kickoff, he fumbled.
Yeah, but in a punt, 90-something times. It was just a fluke play. And I think Hayball's numbers are a little skewed because he hadn't punted very much. And I think he had one kind of duck in one of these games recently. It was Atlanta or something. So
he's been he's been better than Headley.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which is not saying a whole lot.
But I do think that, if points are scored in this game, I think the Saints have done actually really, probably something that we ought to talk about at some point is they are I think, got to be leading the league in like the number of kickoffs returned against them, because it's a strategy for them and it's worked out. I mean, how many times have you seen opponents with a starting field position better than the 30-yard line?
Maybe once.
It's pretty consistently been like the 18 to 26, and I think that's a really impressive job by Rizzi, taking these new rules and using it to his advantage. He's got a really, really smart, sound coverage team, and they're gaining an average starting field position of probably like 4 or 5 yards, and we've seen it play out for the offense too, because that has turned into a lot of short fields for the Saints offense.
I think it's an area of the team that everyone takes for granted.
Yeah,
that's consistently an advantage for the Saints in every game, and no one really ever talks about it.
Look, it could obviously be a difference in a close game. So let's go into our keys to the game. We're running a little bit short on time. Y'all have to get out to practice. So boil this thing down, Jeff. What is a key? If the Saints do this well, they can win this game.
Avoid turnovers. They cannot give short fields to that Chiefs offense, and avoid those kind of glaring mistakes. I mean, I've seen so many games. I've covered so many games like this where you're on the road in a hostile environment, crowds going crazy. They can't grab in the secondary. They're going to get called for that in this kind of game where there's a spotlight on you already. They just can't let Mahomes run around and throw one of those into contested coverage and get the calls.
Patrick Mahomes threw for 107 yards, but drew 5 pass interference penalties.
Right.
The Kansas City, yeah.
Right. I mean, we see, or the one thing that has hurt this defense so far is yards after catch, which is unusual. They've given up a lot of catch and runs. We mentioned the one against Dallas, obviously the Goddard one. That's another concern. So if they tackle well, which I think overall they've tackled pretty well. I think their missed tackles are like 17 in 4 games. It's not awful. They're kind of in the middle. I definitely think they can win this game. Matter of fact, when we get to the predictions.
Alert. Yeah, we'll see.
Yeah.
Luke?
I'm actually going to piggyback off of something Jeff said earlier. They've got to get into manageable down and distances in this game, and that means they're going to have a smart plan with the run game and with this passing game to stay out of 3rd and 8 or worse, because that's where this Chiefs defense is going to feast on them, and that's where, frankly, you don't want Derek Carr on the road in a crazy environment with blitzes in his face on 3rd and 8. Yeah. So, look, when we've seen the Saints offense at its best early in the season, they were converting 3rd downs at a crazy rate because they were always in 3rd and 3 or shorter, and then they can open up their whole playbook. So, I mean, it's got to happen this week.
Derek Carr 1-8 in his career at Arrowhead, and that was the COVID year. There was 13,000 fans there. So he has never won in a full house Arrowhead. And I don't think you can sit there and say, like, a key to the game, protect the interior of the offensive line. I don't think it's going to consistently happen. You've got to scheme away from that, and Derek Carr's going to have to make some plays under pressure, or you're going to have screen passes set up or whatever, roll him out, whatever it is to get him away from Chris Jones. Matt, what you got?
I'll stick with Travis Kelce. I know he hasn't had a great start, but like I said earlier, just the damage that tight ends have been able to do to this team. And I just think he's still a good enough player to where he could really hurt them. Even if it's like 1 or 2 plays, that's enough to swing like that. I would say explosives again, but I said that last week. Like, you just can't have Paulson Adebo committing another 30-yard pass interference penalty. Like, you just got to cut out some of these obvious mistakes.
3 out of the top 5 receiving performances by tight ends by receiving yards last 2 seasons against the Saints. Dallas Goedert, T.J. Hawkinson, and Sam Laporta all went over 130 yards.
And Travis Kelce, not as good as he was like 2 years ago, still really, really good.
Travis Kelce had the top performance in that list. He had 179 yards in a game last year. He's still a good player. And look, after Rashee Rice went down last week, Kelce's averaging a career low 39.5 yards per game right now. After Rashee Rice went down last week, he finished the game with season highs in catches, receptions, and targets.
All right.
So he's still a part of the offense.
That's going to bring us to our Saints-Chiefs predictions here on the Saints Insider. It's brought to you by Bank Plus. And we'll start with Rod Walker, who's not here. He's got the Chiefs winning 21-17. So I think he's on board kind of with what we're thinking, a lower scoring game, maybe a 1-score game. He's got Mahomes and the Chiefs coming out and winning 21-17. Matt?
I had a 27-19 for the Chiefs, making it an 8-point game, 1 score. but I still like. I think the Chiefs. This is the game that they start to find some things offensively, and they get a little bit back on track and look a little bit more like the Chiefs.
I am not on board with that. I actually have the lowest score of any of our predictions. I have 17-14 Kansas City. I think it just feels like one of those games. Set them from Missouri. You got to show me. By the way, Mizzou's got a big game Saturday. Go Tigers. They've got to show me they can win this game, right? Like if they could be up 14-10 going in the fourth quarter, and I still think Mahomes would find a way to win the game because both on offense and on defense, they haven't come up with the clutch plays at the end of the game consistently enough for me to think they can find a way to win this game, especially with all the injuries. I do think it's a good spot for the Saints. Just don't see it happening. Luke?
Yeah, I agree with you on that. I actually think it's going to be a little bit higher scoring. I think the primetime games, you just feel like those end up being higher scoring games sometimes when the Saints are involved. But I also agree. I think the Chiefs are going to win this one. I have it 27-23, I think. And the reasoning for that is very much like the same thing you're saying. I absolutely think the Saints can win this game. I think the Chiefs are vulnerable. I think the Saints match up well with them from just a personnel standpoint defensively. But they've got to show they can do it at some point. Like until they prove that they can do it against this caliber of team, it's going to be hard to pick that team unless your name is Jeff Duncan.
So all of us have basically said the Saints can win this game, but they won't because they can't get it done in the clutch, and we're frankly just not out there enough to predict that. But we also haven't talked to Jeff Duncan yet.
Right. Mr. Out There.
Mr. The bravery.
Mr. Grapefruits. I'm not afraid to go out there.
Come on, man. Let's hear it.
17-16 Saints. They get the lead early. It's going to be critical. Kind of take the crowd out. They don't want to be in a position where they have to drive and win the game late. I think they need to be ahead and win it for once with their defense. Red zone, it's going to be huge. Forcing field goals. That's why I got 16. I think they're going to kick 3 field goals because I don't think they can score touchdowns against the Saints' red zone defense. The question I have, though, is Taylor Swift going to be at the game? Do we know?
I think yes.
I think
she's not.
My very talented wife told me that she is going to be there because she's good at finding that sort of stuff out.
She doesn't have a concert this weekend or something. It's a primetime game, which she always shows up for. So I'm going to say the answer is yes.
Are we going to have comments from her? One of you two going to get her in the suite? Okay, we expect that on NOLA.com in game, right?
Selfies.
Ask her about Colin Saunders' brother.
Absolutely. That's intrepid journalism right there.
Okay, my pick, seriously, though, is against the Chiefs more than for the Saints. Does that make sense?
I'm glad one of us picked them because I do think the Saints can win the game. It'd be a huge win. I will say this. When was the last time the Saints beat a bona fide Super Bowl contender? Unless you count the Cowboys this year, which I don't think we do. They beat the Eagles a couple years ago when Jalen Hurts was not playing. Okay. But other than that, this would be really a breakthrough win for Dennis Allen.
Dennis Allen's biggest win?
I think for sure. So we'll see what happens.
They've had games they were leading late against bona fide Super Bowl.
They have.
They beat Brady when Brady was with the Bucs when they were still pretty. I think Dennis Allen beat him. So
and they certainly had a chance to beat him in Tampa too when
another 17-16
on another primetime game. Yeah,
another 17-16 game. I feel like you're
all right. Well, on that note, we'll see if the Saints can break through and get it done. We'll have a Saints Insider post-game show for you Monday night. And until then, our thanks to Norman Bell, our producer. He's Matthew Paras, Luke Johnson, and Jeff Duncan. I'm Zach Ewing. Check us out on NOLA.com. Subscribe, like, comment, all that good stuff, and we will see you next time.